On January 16, 2021, at the ripe old age of 29, Max Holloway stepped into the octagon for the 24th time. No one in the audience knew just how special of a performance they were in for. Against Calvin Kattar, one of the featherweight division's slickest strikers, Holloway turned in arguably the best performance in an already storied career. 445 significant strikes landed out of 744 attempted, leading to an accuracy of 59%. A striking differential of 312 significant lands. 141 significant strikes landed in round 4 alone. And this is all against a man who has finished guys like Shane Burgos, Ricardo Lamas, and Jeremy Stephens. After 2 exceedingly technical title fights with the current champion, Alexander Volkanovski, it almost seemed like everyone had forgotten just how good Max Holloway is. As such, the Kattar fight served as a stark reminder that Max Holloway is one of the best fighters on the face of the planet. But it goes beyond that one 25-minute long contest. Max Holloway has been breaking records and cementing his place his entire career. His indelible pace may have peaked on that historic evening, but these high-volume, skilled beatdowns have become expected over the past near decade. Here are, according to the UFC statistics, ranks 10-2 in terms of the most career significant strikes landed in the UFC. Some of the greatest fighters of all time are present here, in Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Frankie Edgar, Dustin Poirier, and the human asterisk himself, John Jones. You've also got guys who are known for their cardio and volume in Angela Hill, Michael Bisping, Nate Diaz, and RDA. Of course, we have Cowboy, who currently owns the record for the most UFC wins and finishes. Here's Max Holloway at number 1. 2,618 significant strikes. For those without their calculators, that's a discrepancy of 891 significant strikes between Max and the second place, Donald Cerrone, who has 13 more octagon appearances than Holloway and 5 more wins. He has 907 more significant strikes than the fighter who has the highest average fight time in the UFC, Joanna Jędrzejczyk. This is what happens when you're also number 5 in strikes landed per minute and number 8 in total fight time. Max Holloway fight means that Holloway is throwing at you constantly, and it's likely going to be a long night. He doesn't finish fights particularly early, instead winning based on his chin and cardio. Few fighters, besides arguably Cain Velasquez, Joanna Jędrzejczyk, and Khabib Nurmagomedov, have weaponized pace the way that Holloway has. First time we really got to witness this in action was on the 1st of June 2012, when Holloway fought Pat Schilling. Compared to 312 with Kattar, the significant strike differential between Holloway and Schilling feels measly, just 91. But this is still an immense beatdown. All the customary Holloway tools are out in fine form. Holloway doubled and tripled up his jab splendidly. In this instance, he fires off 7 in quick succession whilst avoiding Schilling's return. Now off of that jab, he employed his left hook, and when he aimed at Schilling's body, he made an instant impact. Schilling pulled guard on multiple occasions in the second round, after he was hit with left hooks to the body and right hooks up top, and his panicked responsive takedown attempts were failing. If this fight were to take place in a more modern landscape, Holloway likely would have received 10-8s for both the second and the third rounds, where he outlanded Schilling 50-9 and 45-7 respectively. Schilling could not get anything going against Holloway, and you bet part of the reason was because of Holloway's volume, propelled by his jab and counter striking. And this. I don't know why Holloway wanted to do a Pettis-esque off the cage kick, but at least he got a hard right hand out of it. Regardless, this fight against Schilling served as not only Holloway's first UFC win, but also the first occasion where he landed in excess of 100 significant strikes, something he has done more than any other fighter, both in all fights overall as well as specifically 3-rounders. Now let's jump forward in time to 2014. In comparison to his fight with Schilling, the stats for Holloway's bout with Will Chope don't seem as remarkable. 74 significant strikes to 33, a 41 strike differential. The difference in this case is that this fight concludes midway through the second round, when Holloway secures a brutal TKO, spurred on by some fantastic strategic adjustments. Chope, standing at 6'4" and possessing a 76-inch reach, started the fight long, and Holloway initially struggled to get on the inside. Chope was doing well, landing rear hand uppercuts, chopping with the outside low kick, and landing an awkward-looking right straight/hook intermittently. It was when Max started feinting his entries and looking to counter the jab with his overhand right that he started finding his mark. Here, he pulls back to avoid Chope's jab, throws his own, and then curls the overhand right over Chope's lead hand. By actively countering Chope's forward pressure, he started to stifle that pressure, leading to a vintage Max Holloway performance. When Chope and Holloway would fall into the clinch after these exchanges, Max would batter the body with hooks and knees from the double collar ties. At the end of the first round, Max nearly finishes the fight with a brutal knee to the body. This foreshadows the demolition derby that is the second round. Max landed the same amount of significant strikes in both the first and the second frames, only the second round finished after 2 minutes and 27 seconds. At 63% striking accuracy, Max was deadly in this second round, and finished things off with a flurry of hooks, first to the head, before ending with a shot to the body. When Holloway gets started, he rarely stops. Flash forward to August of that same year, and Max Holloway finds himself against Clay Collard. Here, just through the statistics, we can visualise Holloway breaking his opponent. Collard goes toe-to-toe with Max for the first 5 minutes, landing 44 significant strikes. In the second round, that number drops by more than half. And in the final round, where Clay is finished, he doesn't even reach double figures. In that same round, Holloway lands 47 significant strikes at 79% accuracy. After a wild first round in which Holloway and Collard exchanged with gusto, it was the Hawaiian who settled down the Utah native. Collard could not keep his ridiculous pace going in the second, and Holloway found his mark with his 1-2s, and a sneaky high kick that caused serious damage all throughout the bout. In the third round, Holloway did the majority of his damage on the canvas, after sprawling on a takedown attempt and landing a just legal knee. The 39 shots he landed on the ground prior to and during the final finish would be the most shots Holloway would land on the ground for a while, until a fateful night in Rio de Janeiro. As we launch forward towards Max Holloway's first undisputed title fight, take note of all the green. Since losing to Conor McGregor in August of 2013, Holloway will not face the sting of defeat for a while. He powers through veteran Cub Swanson in April of 2015, lands 103 significant strikes to Ricardo Lamas' 64, before the two bang it out in one of the most iconic moments in MMA history at UFC 199. He drains Anthony Pettis with pace and body shots in the main event of UFC 206 to win the interim title. By December of 2016, Max Holloway had racked up 10 consecutive wins, 7 of them by finish. The only other fighter with a longer active UFC win streak? One of the greatest of all time, Demetrius Johnson. Despite this, Holloway enters his championship unification bout the underdog. Since his last loss, Holloway has only been the betting underdog twice, against Cub Swanson and Andre Fili. But his next fight looked, at least on paper, to be his greatest challenge thus far. To win the undisputed belt, he would have to thwart the greatest featherweight of all time, Jose Aldo, in his backyard of Rio de Janeiro. It started like so many of Holloway's other bouts. As he was trying to find his rhythm early, Max was caught by Aldo's ferocious speed. Aldo's famous left hook found its mark, setting up a dangerous flurry that Holloway just managed to avoid the worst of. But after working his jab to the body and some 1-2s in the dying minutes of the round, Holloway started to come alive. The second was where the feints came into play. You know, we've talked about all the shots Holloway throws and lands, but a lot of his success is a product of thoughtful feinting so as to draw big responses. Aldo has always had a reputation as a fast starter who would gas over time. Take a look through his round-by-round stats per fight, and during his championship run, we often see him fade. Against Ricardo Lamas, Aldo averaged just over 19 significant strikes landed per round for the first 3 frames. In the final 2 rounds, he landed 4 shots altogether. In the final round against Mark Hominick, Aldo attempted just 12 significant strikes, landing 3 of them. It's a proven trend that Aldo fades as a fight goes on. Holloway seemed acutely aware of this. As the second round really kicked into gear, Holloway came alive, and that trademark volume reared its head. But more significant than the thrown shots were the lead hand feints, forcing Aldo to slip shots that weren't there. Here, Holloway barely throws his lead hand proper, but the whole time, Aldo's head is in motion, ready for a shot to come down the center line. It's difficult to coast when you've got to keep your defense in check every moment of a championship fight. By the end of the second round, Max had started to taunt, and Aldo was looking tired. And then, the mythical third round Holloway emerged. Between the start of the round and 2 minutes and 9 seconds into the round, Holloway officially landed 21 significant strikes. That was more than he landed in the entire first round. This specific time I just referenced was selected because it was at this point that Holloway knocked the King of Rio down with a smooth jab cross pullback, jab cross. From here, using the threat of the rear naked choke to set up his ground and pound, Max Holloway was able to secure the undisputed UFC Featherweight Championship. What's craziest about this whole situation is not only did Holloway defeat one of the greatest fighters on the planet definitively and emphatically, but he did it twice. At UFC 218, after Frankie Edgar dropped out of his scheduled title fight with Holloway, Aldo stepped up to fight Holloway on short notice in an immediate rematch. And whilst Aldo did better the second time at it, the same principles proved difficult to work around. His output actually increased in the rematch, so as opposed to coasting, Aldo seemed committed to finishing the fight early. But even with his increased volume, Holloway's feinting was insurmountable. Watch this sequence, as Holloway feints liberally with the lead hand, prompting slips to the left and right by Aldo. Whilst the first round was a defensive masterclass from both men, Holloway with his subtle slips and well-timed pullbacks, Aldo with his deep slips and pivots, it seemed to delay the inevitable. The second round was more telling. Beautiful low kicks from Aldo started the second frame, and he was finding his mark with his jab and left hook. But as the period crept along, Max's jab took over. Aldo landed 31 significant strikes in that second round, but Max landed 41. And then came third round Holloway once again. If we go into the UFC record books, Holloway appears 4 times in the top 10 for significant strikes landed in a single round. This third round against Aldo is 5th on that list. In a relentless barrage, Holloway brutalised the former champion. Unlike the first fight, there wasn't a definitive knockdown. Instead, Holloway just pumped out strikes until Aldo was forced to shoot just to alleviate the pressure. From there, Holloway sprawled, and a sequence eventually led to another TKO stoppage. After 174 significant strikes, Max Holloway had categorically turned back the great Jose Aldo. But as he dabbed with his son Rush, we were all ignorant to the heights that this man could climb. It seemed as though Max Holloway had summited his Everest, twice dominating the best fighter he possibly could. But, as we would soon find out, he was only just starting to realise his true cardiovascular propelled potential. 92 days after Holloway dismantled Jose Aldo for the second time, Brian Ortega landed a fateful uppercut on the man who was meant to have challenged for Holloway's belt next. In a short notice bout against Frankie Edgar, undefeated featherweight contender Brian Ortega dispatched the former lightweight champion in less than a round, establishing himself as the next in line. And with his impressive resume, he seemed like a genuine challenge for the undisputed champion. Victories over Diego Brandao, Cub Swanson, and Renato Moicano stood out on his record. and notably, none of his UFC fights to that point had gone to decision. Every single one of his victories had come via finish. Brian Ortega was and remains the definition of kill or be killed. Perhaps this is why the odds were essentially even coming into their matchup. They didn't remain that way for long though. With his command of range and the snappiest 1-2 of his career thus far, Holloway was popping Ortega's head back less than a minute into the contest. In round 2, Holloway landed 66 significant strikes, the most strikes he'd ever landed in a round where he hadn't finished his opponent. Switching stances in the middle of combinations, Holloway was finding success both at distance and in tight. His hooks to the body were insistent, and the fade back 1-2 kept coming and coming. In the third round, despite outlanding Ortega by 20 strikes, Holloway found himself in relative trouble. Ortega found his mark with his own jab cross before finding success with his lead hook in combination. After a takedown that Holloway sprung back up from in no time, Ortega landed this meaty spinning elbow. Thus, despite landing 50 significant strikes, the third was still contentious for Holloway. But it wouldn't matter in due course. After indicating to the broadcasters that he was going to end the fight in the fourth, Holloway would go on to break records. The reigning champion landed 134 significant strikes to 28 in a 5-minute span. That's nearly 27 significant strikes per minute, just under 4.5 strikes every 10 seconds. And this is with Ortega attempting 5 takedowns throughout the round and having brief opportunities to stall the action. This Max Holloway, throwing overhand counters to Ortega's jab and blitzing forward with shots to both the body and the head, is an unstoppable force. The fight was, unsurprisingly, called off by the doctor when Ortega went back to his stool. Holloway had kept his promise to the commentators, finishing things in the fourth. Since this point, there have been some ups and downs. Holloway went up a weight class to fight Dustin Poirier for the interim lightweight championship at UFC 236, and after an immensely close back and forth war, Holloway's streak fell to the wayside as Louisiana's finest was declared the winner. Even in that losing effort, Holloway outstruck his opponent by 3 significant strikes. A relatively straightforward defense of the featherweight championship against Frankie Edgar followed, before Holloway was usurped by current featherweight champion Alexander Volkanovski. But January's victory over Kattar has done well to remind those who doubted that Max Holloway is still capable of drowning his opponent in the fashion that best defines him. So don't be surprised if Holloway is fighting for the belt once again in no time whatsoever. He's earned the benefit of the doubt. Thanks for watching, guys. I tried something a little more long form this time around because I've been watching a lot of John Boyce recently, and I wanted to emulate that kind of statistically driven narrative-based structure. So I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, make sure to click those like and subscribe buttons. I'd really appreciate that. Thanks, guys.